Hey, wonderful people. This is a sample of this week's Patreon episode, a little dive into the history of mental health, as there is every Thursday. Once a month, you get the whole episode on the main feed. All of the other weeks of the month, you get the first few minutes. So this is the first 5 minutes of my dive into the history of the empty chair technique in therapy. If you want to hear more or hear these weekly updates as well as other bonus materials, go to patreon.com/brokenbrain to sign up as a member. Remember that if you do sign up as a member, 50% of your monthly donation will go to the charity that we are highlighting within the month that you join, which this month is Horses of Hope in Isabela, Puerto Rico, which brings equine therapy and interactions and dealing with horses to help people with disabilities and a history of trauma.
The Broken Brain.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Broken Brains Thursday This Story, our little dive into the history of psychology and how it interacts with the culture. Today, I'd like to share with you a little bit about something called empty chair technique and kind of where that comes from and what that is. It's something you may be familiar with. You may have seen it depicted in fiction or whatever. In essence, what empty chair technique means is that you have an individual, a client or a patient in a therapeutic kind of setting, who will set up, they often have two chairs set up, is how this is practically often done. And then the person will sit in one, look at the empty chair, and then do some visualization about someone being in that chair who they would like to talk to. And we'll get into some of the different ways and variations of that. But in some cases, they will talk to and express themselves to that pretend person in the chair or whoever, whatever. And then in some cases, they'll just talk. And the idea is talk as if you were being listened to, right? In other cases, they will open up a two-way dialogue where they will talk and then they may get up, move over, sit down, and then try to put themselves in the shoes of whoever or whatever. I'll tell you why I say whatever in a minute. It is that they're talking to, and then respond with what they think that the person might say, or they may respond with what they need from that person, what they would like to hear, right? And sometimes that's done just by visualization, and maybe throughout this process, the therapist may mostly sit back and be silent, or they may prompt and talk while it's happening. So there's all sorts of different variations of how you would use this tool. As always, with guided visualizations and things of that nature, always important to remember this is not like a magic trick or anything like that. It's not like not even necessarily a deep trance state. Although it is important to get into the right mindset, it's good to know that this isn't something that it's like, oh, he said the wrong thing, broke the spell, kind of a thing, which I think, unfortunately, sometimes things that involve imagination or visualization can sometimes feel like that. Like it's a very fragile connection I have to this therapeutic process. You do want to focus. You do want to take it seriously. You do want to try to, eliminate distractions and things to some extent. But basically, the point is that this is a tool that can be used when people are trying to process different kind of emotions, particularly with tricky relationships. Okay. Now, I want to pivot a little bit into the history of where empty chair technique came from. Then we'll go into a little bit of what types of relationships or situations can be addressed with this tool. That's why I said whoever or whatever, and we'll get into a little bit of what that means. So, empty chair technique is most often associated with Gestalt therapy. Now, that's not the topic today, but a little bit about Gestalt therapy is that it originated in the 1930s in Germany. Fritz and Laura Perls were psychoanalysts who had been trained in Freudian psychoanalysis, and they developed some techniques and some theories and philosophies that very much broke away from psychoanalysis to create their own thing. Gestalt therapy, especially over time, has been thought of as a pretty eclectic kind of thing. Funny enough, I don't hear people talk about Gestalt very, very often anymore. When I went to school, it was something that you would wind up on a paper if you were going to write about some of the major influences in psychology. And so maybe it's still being taught that way, but I don't hear it talked about, even though some of the techniques that were utilized and developed for Gestalt therapists do persist. An empty chair, by the way, is sort of a precursor to a lot of the ways we do guided visualizations, related sometimes to hypnosis, and neurolinguistic programming kind of techniques. In modern times, we're more talking about open dialogue with maybe our inner child or our emotional parts if you're doing parts work or IFS. And so I would consider this to be kind of a precursor, and it's still used in many, many cases, even by those who have never really studied Gestalt therapy or any of its other underpinnings. It's something that can be quite a useful tool. Gestalt therapy really took off more in the early 1950s. So we're talking about kind of 20 years of development and things that the Pearls were using and basically developing, and it really became accepted over that period of time, which is often the way with new theories or new treatment strategies.